Hello. Yesterday I talked about what I'd done since I finished working, but it's probably a good thing to go back a little further than that. I worked for a computer company called Hewlett Packard, or HP, you might know the name, and I was a project manager for 15 years with them. And they decided, as they did frequently, to reduce the number of people working for the company worldwide. And so maybe every 2 or 3 years this would happen, and they'd give people a year's pay to finish. So I thought about it and I wondered what I would do. During that time, I'd been seeing a woman who lived in Melbourne, not far from where I lived, and she decided to buy a house in a small countryside town, and she would live there. And it was a bit inconvenient. It was a 2-hour drive from where I lived, and so I would only see her at weekends. And when the time came for me to think about leaving or accepting the payout that was being offered, we talked about it, and she said, no, you're not going to live with me. That's not the plan. So that changed things for me a lot about what I would do. And so I started to think about it, and I had about 6 months to think about it. And so in that time, this woman and I, we went for a holiday to Fiji, and I'd been there before a couple of times. And I started to think about buying a boat, travelling around the islands, living on the boat. And so I started looking. Not that many boats of that type are available in Fiji, mostly sailing boats or bigger boats, whatever. But I went there the day after I finished working. I flew to Fiji and looked around, and I found one for sale at the Suva Yacht Club. Now, Suva is the capital of Fiji, and so the Royal Suva Yacht Club was where the boat was. So I looked at it, I met the owner. He had bought a bigger boat, and the boat that I was looking at had been sitting idle for nearly 1 year. Although he did tell me that they did regular maintenance, they started the engines and did all that stuff. So we talked about it, and I said, I got to think, because it's a big thing for me to do, to leave Australia and come and live in Fiji. So I thought about it for maybe 2 weeks, and then one day I rang him and I said, I agree to your price, and I'll be there in about 3-4 weeks. And so I sent the money, and I owned a boat. So I lived there. I did a lot of things to the boat. It was a big boat, and it slept 6 people, but it had been used as a fishing boat mostly. And so I had to put things in that I needed, like a shower, solar panels on the roof, all sorts of different things. So I did all that. And I did that, and it was a very interesting lifestyle, and I had the yacht club next to where I was moored, and so I was able to either cook my own meals on the boat, or go to the restaurant and have a meal, or even go into the centre, into the city, and go to restaurants there. Then about more than a year later, I was in Australia. My mother was very sick, and she died not long after. So I was in Australia for about 6 weeks, and I got a phone call from a guy a friend of mine from the club, and he said, there's a fella that wants to buy your boat. And I said, no, it's not for sale. And he said, look, just tell me a price. So I told him a price, double what I'd paid for it, and he thought that was too much. And then about 6 months later, same thing again. A different guy came to me and he said, I've met somebody who wants to buy your boat. And I said, well, tell him to come and look. So it turned out to be the same guy, a Texan from America. A bit strange man, but anyway, we agreed on a price and it got sold. So that left me homeless. I was standing in the Royal Suva Yacht Club with nowhere to sleep that night. So I went to a hotel and I stayed there. Then some friends of mine in Chiang Mai, Thailand, they said I should go and visit. I'd never been there, never been to anywhere in Asia. So I spent some weeks there, and they suggested I should come and visit Vietnam, which I did. And that's how I came to be here. But that's only part of the story, really. What happened after I came here? Who did I meet? What did I do? Where did I go? That's for the next video.